The film opens with a man named Frank Vega. Frank has been through a lot in his life, especially since he served in the Vietnam War. One day, he's just riding the bus by himself when he sees two troublemakers making a fuss. It makes him think of the simple life he had with his parents as a child. As he grew up, he had a sweetheart, and they promised to get married when he got back from the war. But here's the catch. Frank had to serve in the Vietnam War for 10 years. When he finally returned home, he discovered that his girl had left for another man and had 2 children, which must have hurt. Heartbroken, Frank decided to apply to the police academy in the hopes that his military experience would help him, but they rejected him. As a result, he was unable to find employment anywhere, so he ended up making a living by selling hot dogs for most of his life. However, things took a turn for the worse when a brand new hot dog truck arrived in town and took nearly all of Frank's clients, leaving him with no other option than to become a drifter wandering around without a real home or job. Now, let's fast forward to the present. 2 troublesome kids are on the bus making a big scene and even attempting to hurt an elderly man. Frank intervenes and saves the elderly man, giving him a good beating. Some people on the bus recorded the entire incident and posted it on social media. Suddenly, Frank becomes well known after his brave deed goes viral online, and everyone thinks he's awesome. They even start making t-shirts and gratis with his face on them, and the police even give him a ride around town. But that's not all. This is where things get interesting. Frank and his mother are invited to a talk show, and he is in the spotlight. Unfortunately, 3 months later, his mother dies, leaving behind her home and pet dog. When Frank's friend and fellow Vietnam veteran Klondike Washington moves in with him, he gives him a USB ash drive, which is for Frank's late mother. Frank places the safe deposit box in the safe for safekeeping because he has no idea what's inside. When Klondike goes out one evening to get some cigarettes, he encounters these 2 miscreants. Terrence and Sebastian are after the ash drive that Klondike gave him, but Klondike tells them a lie that he doesn't have it with him. This doesn't sit well with those 2 thugs, and they end up killing Klondike. They also make a quick getaway. When Frank learns of his best friend's death, he rushes to the morgue to see Klondike's body. He is quite shaken up and asks the police to look into Klondike's murder and find the guys who did it. Over Milwaukee, Frank's friend who works as a police officer stops by his house one night and tries to reassure him that the police department is making a lot of effort to find Klondike's killer. However, later when Frank watches the news, he notices that the officers have solved other crimes much more quickly, which bothers him, especially when he sees them do nothing about the murder of his best friend. Frank decides he's going to take matters into his own hands and solve this mystery himself because he has had enough of the police taking their time. Frank is currently investigating, and he begins by looking into the alley. After looking around where Klondike was shot, he discovers some empty bullet casings and a locket with a woman's picture inside. Thinking this might be a clue, Frank takes the bullets and the locket to a pawn shop. The man there informs him that the locket belongs to a felon named Terrence, and inside it is a picture of Terrence's wife. Frank has an address for this Terrence guy, so if he rushes over there, he hasn't been home for a week. Frank returns the locket to Terrence's wife and asks her where he might be. Frank leaves quickly for the park where Terrence used to play basketball with some friends after hearing from Terrence's wife that he used to do so. When he arrives, he sees a group of guys playing hoops and approaches them to inquire about Terrence. Frank approaches the young men in the park who he believes might know where Terrence is, but instead of being helpful, they start making fun of him. This really irritates Frank, and he ends up giving them a good thrashing. When he gets them to stop teasing him, they reveal that they don't really know where Terrence is, but they mention a guy named Ronaldo who might have the inside scoop because Terrence and Ronaldo were close friends. Frank then goes to Ronaldo's place and meets Ronaldo's roommate, who informs him that Ronaldo is hanging out at a bar across town. Frank goes there, but he encounters some people there who don't want him there, so if he has to put a couple of them in their place, Frank finds Ronaldo and scares him a little. He'll reveal where Terrence is. We move on to Panther, a big-shot gangster boss who is actually in charge of Terrence and Sebastian, the 2 troublemakers, while Terrence is seeing a woman named Tanya. Major Williams, the town's corrupt mayor, is pressing the Panthers to locate that ash drive during a very serious conversation. It turns out that Klondike stole the ashtray quickly, and that it contains evidence of the mayor's corrupt activities and corruption while he was in office. Klondike had previously worked for Panther, but had decided to leave, and he did something cunning by stealing Major Williams' extremely important ash drive and fleeing with it, betraying Panther in the process. Frank is on a mission and receives assistance from his neighbor, a young man named Martin, who wants to find out what's on that flash drive. One night, Frank visits Tanya, who works at a massage parlor. He asks her about Terrence, but she isn't very helpful, so Frank quietly follows her home from work after breaking into Tanya's place. Frank and Terrence use some rough language to extract information about who ordered the hit on Klondike. Frank decided to take matters into his own hands because Terrence was being a little reserved and wasn't telling the truth. He kind of forced Terrence's hand onto the kitchen trash can, which hurt him a little, but that worked, and Terrence eventually told the truth. It turns out that Klondike got himself into a lot of trouble because he started using drugs. Panther Seed was named by Big Shot. That ash drive we've been discussing contained some classified information about Major Williams' oil well drilling in the area. Klondike stole it. Terrence even tells Frank where to look for this Panther guy, but before Frank leaves to face the Panther, he gets ready at home and hears a commotion at Martin's place. Amber. Frank is the hero because he intervenes when Martin's mother is having a terrible time with her violent husband. When Amber invites him to lunch, Frank doesn't let the opportunity pass, so he gets dressed nicely, cleans up, and smells amazing. Everything gets cozy during lunch, and they are about to kiss when Martin Jr. enters the room. Frank demands that Amber and Martin remain at his house until he fixes her front door. The following day, Frank gives the ash drive to Oser Mellark and then finds Panther at his hiding place. When Panther learned that Frank was pursuing him, when the Panther's gang overwhelms him and he faints and begin torturous actions to get him to reveal the location of the ash. They even connect him to an electric shock device in an attempt to get him to speak. But you know what? Frank is one unyielding man who refuses to give up, even when he is critically injured. Frank's silence irritates Panther, so he takes his wallet and discovers where he lives, speculating that perhaps the ash drive is hidden there with his loved ones. While Frank is being tortured by the Panther's men, however, Frank escapes his bonds and uses a small match that he received from Amber to light it and toss it at some oil drums that are lying around, igniting the entire area and causing a huge explosion. Frank is not letting the Panther escape easily, so they both steal buses and begin this crazy chase, is causing a lot of damage to other cars along the way, and eventually they wreck both buses. Frank isn't giving up, though, and he continues to chase Panther on foot. Along the way, he runs into the two troublemakers from the bus earlier, and these guys try to videotape themselves beating Frank, but Frank shows them who is in charge once more and continues to pursue Panther. The moral of the story is that sometimes all it takes to uncover corruption and defeat bad guys is a hero in a hot dog suit and a little help from your neighbors. When Panther finally makes it to Frank's house and finds Amber there, he threatens to harm her unless he coughs up the flash drive. However, just as Frank arrives to save Amber, the two begin fighting, and just as the Panthers are about to attack him again, Amber jumps on a Panther's back in an attempt to slow him down. This gives Frank the opportunity he needs to put an end to Panther's life. Thanks for watching.